Hello, and welcome everyone to Architecting Commercial Apps, the next presentation in our Tech Talk series. My name is Sethi Hillier, and I'm a Force.com evangelist at Salesforce. Today's presentation is near and dear to my heart as I've been spending my career at Salesforce helping partners, specifically ISVs, build commercial products on Force.com. So I'm very excited to share some of these architectural lessons learned. Today I'm joined with Ketan Kankar, one of the partners from Navatar Group. Ketan, would you mind introducing yourself and Navatar Group?
Sure. Hello, everyone. This is Ketan Kankar from Navatar Group. We are one of Salesforce.com's partners. We actually have our own commercial apps that we have built on the Force.com platform, and we also help other ISVs build products on this platform. Very happy to be joining this webinar.
Thanks, Ketan. So we have a lot to cover today, so let's go ahead and get started. Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and this is our safe harbor statement. We are part of the New York Stock Exchange. Our ticker symbol is CRM. We may discuss some forward-looking statements. As such, please make sure all your purchasing decisions are based on current features. You can refer to this at www.salesforce.com/investor. So today's presentation is all about architecting commercial apps. Traditionally, most ISVs spend their time with this subject. But Force.com makes it so easy to build and commercialize an app that we've seen developers and customers also launch products on Force.com. So we plan to cover many of the considerations that apply to any user deciding to build a commercial app. We'll begin our agenda by doing a quick introduction to Force.com, and then we'll discuss exactly what a commercial app is. Then Ketan and I will outline the path to a commercial app and discuss many relevant architectural considerations. Finally, we'll conclude with some next steps and questions and answers. So I think it's important that we just quickly discuss the real-time cloud. As an architect, there are many reasons why building on Force.com makes sense. Building a commercial app requires an infrastructure and a platform, and with Force.com you get both. If you see here, you can see our Force.com infrastructure sitting at the bottom. This has been maturing for the last 10 years. It's global, it's secure, it's trusted, and we've invested over $500 million into this. So when you're releasing a commercial app, your customers are going to expect an infrastructure to operate flawlessly, and Force.com provides that proven track record that you can trust and your customers can trust. Now above that is the Force.com platform, and that provides a suite of features that you can leverage quickly to architect and build your commercial application. And this can include our relational database engine, our platform technologies like Visualforce, Apex Code, Sites, and a lot more. And really, it's together with all these pieces that make up the platform that you will use to build your application. We've already seen hundreds of other partners build applications, and as well as Salesforce ourselves. It's our CRM products, such as our SFA, our call center, our marketing apps. All of these apps run on the same platform and infrastructure that you will use as well. So I think before you begin, it's important to spend some time getting to know Force.com. You know, architecting a commercial app is like a journey, and like any trip, it's always great to have a plan. And so these tips will help you kind of survey the land so you're equipped for technical success. So we provide everyone a free developer edition. If you have one, I definitely recommend exploring it. You can sign up for one for free at developer.force.com after this. We also run bi-weekly or every other week fastest path to SaaS technical webinars. I highly recommend signing up for this. Again, developer.force.com, you can sign up, and we'll give you a highlight of how you can build a commercial application and some other things to consider. We have a series of workbook tutorials that cover all the different features of the platform. It's a great way for you to understand what we have to offer so you're not spending time trying to reinvent the wheel. And then finally, we have an Architect Core Resource Library. I'll show you the URL at the end of the presentation that has a lot of other articles that I recommend reviewing, including the companion article that goes with this presentation. So the end goal here is to architect a commercial app. So let's just make sure our definitions are on the same page. To Salesforce, a commercial app is an application that's intended for a public audience. This means that you're adding value to many customers, not just one customer. Essentially, you are intended to make money off of this application, and you plan to support it with future releases down the road. So the way you can do this is by leveraging our distribution technology. Part of Force.com and part of architecting a commercial app is thinking about the delivery. And so Force.com does this by providing you a distribution mechanism that we call the distributed organization model. So to begin, let's first define this word organization. Organization, or what we call org for short, is an instance of Force.com. Each customer has an org, and depending on their edition, they have certain features that are available in this org. So if you take a look at this diagram, you can see here we're outlining this model, and it's possible because of managed packages. So the idea is pretty simple. If you look over the left, that's where you'll have your developer edition, and it's in your developer edition that you will develop your application. After you've done that, you can package it up using our packaging technology, and you'll create a managed package. You can then distribute this managed package through the AppExchange or TrialForce. Customers who have their own Salesforce org, their production org, they can install this managed package into their org, and they instantly have your app. If they're using TrialForce, you can also automatically bundle your app with Force.com edition, so that way when they sign up, they automatically get your app and our edition powering it. These models allow you to distribute your app to many customers all at once, hence the name distributed org model. The benefit is you can use the license management app, which is a tool that we provide, allowing you to track the installs and provision licenses of your managed package. Also, with managed packages, this allows you to seamlessly upgrade your customers. So that means whenever you want to release a new fix or release a new version, your customers can upgrade with a few clicks. Now, for your customers, the benefits here is they can customize this managed package after they installed it. So they can also make it work to their specific needs. As well as when you're using the distributed org model, your customers can have multiple apps in their single org, so they can really have all the solutions they need to manage all their business processes. So as we discuss the path to commercial app, we'll be focusing on this particular model. So now that you have some definitions under your belt, let's walk down the path to commercial apps. There's 5 main stages that you see here that we plan to cover: design, develop, test, distribute, and support. Each stage has many steps that you'll want to consider, and we're going to outline some of the pieces that are very important during the architecting of your commercial application. There's so much with Force.com that as an architect, you'll find these considerations very valuable as they save you time and ultimately help you architect the next killer app. So the first thing that you're going to want to think about as you design is if your application is going to be native or composite. So native means that all of your data, all of your logic, all of your user interface runs on Force.com, whereas composite means that you're doing more of a hybrid model. You have some functionality living on Force.com, and you're also hosting some functionality outside of Force.com on another infrastructure, and you're leveraging the Web Services API to integrate. Now, there are benefits to using native, and I think it's valuable that you know as an architect, because these are things that are important to consider when you're designing. And when you're building native, it really allows you to focus on the innovation of your app. You don't need to worry about the infrastructure because we'll take care of that for you, like I said. Also, native apps get better visibility on the AppExchange because a lot of our customers, they've been spending so much time using Force.com and our CRM products built on Force.com that they're expecting that native apps are also going to have that trust and reliability that they've been getting with Salesforce CRM. And so these apps get a lot of visibility on the AppExchange, which is great for your commercial success. Native apps can be authorized. What this means is, and I'll talk about this a little later, every edition of Salesforce can have certain features. Apex Code is one of these features that's not available in all editions by default. But if you release a native app and we authorize it, your Apex Code in your app will actually run in Professional and Group Edition. So this gives you more market for your in terms of customers. And then finally, native apps, they can be installed in any org without affecting the apps, tabs, and object limits. Again, each edition has different limits, but when you use a native app, these particular areas, apps, tabs, and objects are immune. So, Keithan, you guys have been developing a lot on Force.com. Are there any considerations you think about when you're building an app on Force.com?
Right, and actually all our products on Force.com are built native, and beyond the benefits that you highlight here, one of the key things that we also realize is the question of trust. You mentioned earlier, everything is based off the Force.com platform, so the fact that our product is native is a big thing for our customers because they trust Salesforce.com, and if you're a small company building building a commercial app, then building it native is probably the way to go because underlying it's all on the Force.com technology.
Great. Another consideration when you're designing is thinking about, is your application going to be pure platform or is it going to extend the Salesforce CRM functionality? It's important to think about this really early on because it's going to affect the components that you use. So in terms of just definitions, your application is pure platform if it's only custom objects and you're relying on a few of the standard objects that are available to the Force.com editions, that being accounts, contacts, activities, documents, ideas, reports and dashboards, users and notes and attachments. Now, if you plan to extend Salesforce CRM, that means you're probably going to be leveraging some of these existing objects like the leads, the campaigns, opportunities, products, cases, etc. And as a result, that means you'll also probably want to support group, professional, enterprise, and or unlimited edition. So these, again, are things that you want to think about very early on before you architect because based on that, you'll design your application differently. Now, here I want to talk about the different editions. Now, I mentioned before that a distributed org model means you're creating a package that's eventually going to be installed into a different org. And there's different editions of these orgs, and you can see them all here outlined. And why this is important is because essentially for a user to run your application that you architect, they're going to need an edition of Salesforce. Some of them might already have it. Some of them might be net new customers that are going to get it as soon as you get your application. So it's important that you study this so you can see what are all the different editions out there and what are all the different features and objects that are supported. As you can see, some of the features are standard and kind of across the board, like documents and reports and dashboards. Some of them, though, are not included, such as the CRM objects that I mentioned. You don't see those in any of the Force.com edition licenses. And some of them you can maybe get from special permissions. For instance, Apex Code, as I mentioned, it's not there by default for group and professional, but if you're building a managed package that you want to release commercially, that will authorize that for you. Also, if you're building a composite application, I talked about composite a little bit earlier, we allow our partners to leverage a client ID so that they can integrate with Professional Edition. Professional Edition and Group Edition by default don't have API access, but using this API, this client ID, it actually allows you to integrate with Professional Edition. So another valuable thing that you can get when building on our platform. And one of the things that I just want to mention is even though there's a lot of check marks here kind of explaining what features are available, each edition has limits. You know, there's a limit to the number of objects you can have, a limit to the number of fields you can have, tabs, etc. And so you'll get all of these, all that data is specified in our documentation. So I highly recommend just exploring this. This table is also available in the article that comes with this presentation so that you can make sure your application is successful and it's intended for the right customer. Now, one of the last areas you're going to want to think about in terms of design is your data model. Your data model is essentially the foundation of your application. And kind of what you saw earlier, based on the additions that you plan to support, that's going to determine your core data model. You know, if you are going after Force.com edition, then you're not going to have any of those CRM objects, as I mentioned. And then from there, you're going to extend your core data model with custom objects, fields, and relationships. Now, I think there are some important considerations that you should be mindful of when you're working with managed packages. Some of them are you're going to want to determine early on the type of relationship that you're defining because once you release your managed package, you cannot change that relationship. So if you're going to use a lookup or you're going to use a master detail, you can't change it afterwards. Also, when you're using managed packages, once you release, you cannot remove any objects or fields or tabs. Again, this is just so that we can seamlessly upgrade your customers, but it's important to make sure that your data models is kind of defined the way you want it so that you don't have to worry about removing anything down the road. It's important to note that because if you do develop a native app, we will provide you that immunity so that you don't have to worry about your running into objects, tabs, and app limits, but it only covers those three areas. So for instance, if you have more than 100 fields, that's not going to be immune, and so that will still limit what additions you can install in. I think data model is really important. Keaton, how has this affected your guys' design and architecture?
From our perspective, actually, this is one of the very critical aspects when you're building any commercial app. And for some of the reasons that you mentioned here, because you have to really think through as you figure out what you want to manage package as part of your product and how everything would work. So you have to be very clear about your requirements, but not just the business requirements. You need to think through your reporting requirements, your security requirements, also potential future upgrades and new functionality that you may add in later phases. And all those have to be thought through as you determine your data model and the relationship between all the tables. So it's a critical aspect. Definitely pay a lot of attention to this piece.
Excellent. So in terms of developing, one of the first things you'll probably start developing after you've defined your data model and defined the additions that you plan to support is going to be your user interface. And there are two ways that you can approach this using either our standard page layout technology or our Visualforce technology, or a combination. I think they both have benefits. With standard page layouts, it's very easy to use. It's all point and click using our metadata so that your users can easily just get pages created for you by Force.com itself. And as a result, it saves you time building these applications. Also, when you're using Visualforce, your customers, after they install your applications, can leverage the native Force.com customization capabilities. So that means after they've installed your app, they can reconfigure your page to meet their needs. Now, with Visualforce, this is using our Visualforce code and markup language, allowing you to embed kind of your web UI technologies on our platform. Definitely great for these slick user interfaces, but as a result, you'll want to think about how is your customer going to be able to customize this. So sometimes you might add like a configuration module. Have you had any situations like this, Ketan, where you've wanted to, why you might choose Visualforce versus standard page layouts or vice versa?
Yeah, actually that's a very common question, an issue that always needs to be addressed when you're building an app, because as you pointed out, a lot of times the base Force.com platform is providing you with a standard interface, and it's very easy to use. Your customers can actually make modifications themselves. But you may have a need where you have to build a Visualforce page because you're trying to create a complex process, or you're doing multiple actions from the same screen. And in those cases, you have to think through what changes may your customers want to make also. And we actually had a situation like that. So if we could demo an app that one of our products that we have built in a Visualforce situation using Visualforce. This is one of our products, and you'll see a Visualforce page here. It's designed for salespeople to be able to do multiple things all from the same screen. And then we had situations like these where, let's say, I'm looking at the opportunities and I'm only looking at open opportunities. And we have screens where you want to see the details of an opportunity, and we have this another Visualforce pop-up that shows you some basic details. Now, one of the use cases that we had was that what you want to see here would vary from customer to customer. So what one customer of ours may want to see would be different than another one. So we actually created a configuration utility which allows the customer to go here and they can specify what fields they want to see. So in the field that was just shown, in the screen that was shown, let's say if I want to add the stage and last activity, I can add those here through this configuration utility. Just save it. And now if I go back to my Visualforce screen and if I click on this summary tab, you'll see that the new fields that I added are now visible in the screen. So this is a way in which if you're building a Visualforce page, you can still create some configuration utilities and allow your customers to be able to customize the application to their own needs.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think going back here, just some things to consider when using managed packages and Visualforce. Your Visualforce cannot be modified by your customer, so you're going to want to think about these other ways on how you can allow your customers to configure, and that's a great example. Also, what's very valuable, especially for architects and people who are releasing commercial applications, is your custom components. That code is obfuscated, so it's hidden, so you don't have to worry about anyone seeing how you do any of your application functionality. Another important piece that we're starting to see a lot is maybe when would you want to incorporate sites or portal? Have you seen this kind of come up to you guys?
Yeah, actually this is a request that we're seeing more and more nowadays. There are lots of situations where your customers want to have some kind of an external web presence, or need to have some kind of interaction with their end users. And with sites and portal technologies, you can now do that. Now, when do you use sites or portal or both? If it's a public-facing website that your customer needs, sites is the way to go. But if the customer's users, there's some more interaction with the customer through some authenticated login, then you can use the portal technologies and use any of either customer portal or partner portals. Now, all of these behind the scenes for sites, the pages are being built using Visualforce, and the fact that you can package Visualforce pages as part of your product means that you can actually create a commercial app with Visualforce pages embedded, which you can actually then package, and your customers can use them to create their own sites and customer portal interfaces also. So to give you an illustration of what's feasible, we have a product which is to manage event registrations, and we're using an example for a client of ours. So this is a public-facing website where people can come in and search for events if they want to register for events. Again, behind the scenes, it's a Visualforce page. I can search for an event. I can see basic details about the event. And if I want, I can go ahead and register for this event too. So let me go ahead and...
So this is great. So you're saying that you can create an application, and as a customer, I'll install my application, and then you can have these Visualforce pages that are part of your app, and then they can instantly add like this web presence to their app.
Correct. And you can, again, as part of the configuration items, you can provide these pages such that the customer can put their own logos and look and feel around these pages, and it becomes a seamless site. So you have a full interactive page. You can kind of, if you want to register, you can search by dates. You can pick sessions that you want to register for. You can build in calculations. You can build in payment methods. And let me go ahead and complete one registration to give you a sense. And it will process and submit this information. Now, you may already be aware that Sites is already integrated with Salesforce. So if I go to the internal Salesforce org, all the records automatically get created. So if I now search for myself, give me some more time. Let me search for...
Gotta love live demos.
All right.
Well, I think you get the idea. So I think the most important thing to note here is that if I'm an architect and if I realize that I plan to build an application and I know that one of the features that my customers are going to want to leverage is how to take my application, how to make it public, how to have either public-facing customers or maybe customers using Customer Portal enter this application, you can package this, you can include this, because these are Visualforce pages, and they can be included in your package.
Correct.
Great. Now, in terms of logic, there are a lot of things that you can do on Force.com. Logic can be created declaratively or programmatically. And as an architect, I think it's very important that you kind of explore both options before proceeding, because there's many benefits to both, and using one versus the other may save you a lot of time. With declarative logic, we have things like being able to leverage our formula fields, our validation rules, our workflow rollups. All these things are kind of implemented through point and click, declaratively, again, using our metadata. So it saves you a ton of time in writing and no testing code required. Now, if you want something more sophisticated, there's obviously Apex code that allows you to leverage our programming language, very Java-like, allowing you to build object-oriented classes and triggers to add more functionality to your application. As an architect, Keithan, when have you decided, or what has been like your determining factors on why you would choose one versus the other or both?
Right. We always recommend that first you should check out the Force.com tools available. I mean, the workflows, formulas, rollups, many times they can meet your needs. And only in case you feel that there's a level of automation you require that goes beyond what those tools provide, then you start looking into Apex and Visualforce. So you can use Apex code to write any kind of powerful logic. In case there's a accompanying user interface that needs to go with it, you can build a Visualforce page on top of it and then use a combination of Visualforce and Apex to build the logic.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think also in terms of that, you also want to consider, how it's affected with the managed package. And again, with Apex code, just like those Visualforce custom control components, that code is obfuscated, which is very important when you're releasing commercial app. You want to be able to make sure you can hide your IP. If your customers want to extend any of your classes, you're going to have to make them global. Otherwise, they're protected and they can't be called or extended. And I mean, we mentioned this kind of with the data model. Some things when you're using managed packages become locked down and you can't make changes. Apex code, on the other hand, though, is very flexible. So if you want to change anything, you can change your Apex code with all your upgrades.
Right, absolutely. And that's a real powerful piece of technology there because you have a logic and you can always build upon that logic. And if you're sending out new upgrades, you can change your code and send out a managed package upgrade to all your customers.
Now, I think another important piece to consider when you're working with Apex code is our governor limits. I mean, Apex code, it's compiled, it's executed on this multi-tenant infrastructure that we develop. So essentially that means that it's a shared resource for all of our customers, partners, and developers. And so we've implemented these governor limits to make sure that our Apex runtime engine is going to ensure that the code is not misbehaving. How do you prepare when you're working with Apex code and Apex governor limits in your apps?
Governor limits are very important to know and understand. So you need to know the DML statements, SOQL queries that you'll be writing. You need to know kind of what volume of data you're talking about, what processing you would need, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. And depending on that, then you can build your code accordingly. Another piece that we feel and we often recommend is code optimization, which we've mentioned here in the best practice. Because it's not just the code that you're writing now. In the future, it'll be expanding on that. So absolutely critical aspect to be able to optimize your code as you're building and writing in Apex. There was actually, to illustrate some of these things, definitely test with a large data sample and make sure you're reviewing all your code. And Satya, I know there's an article regarding the governors in writing governors in Apex code that we should refer people to.
Definitely.
To illustrate an example of when an Apex code may be required or when a governor limit may be required, we can go to a financial services example. So the example I'm bringing here is if you are offering services to manage portfolio for investors, and let's say you have created a portfolio called the diversified portfolio, and in here you say that the portfolio is made up of bonds and global equity stocks, and any investor who invests their portfolio would get split into this ratio. So you'll see 5:3. So any new investments that come in will get split into this ratio. And all the investors who are coming in are showing up as participants. So if I go to, let's say, a new investor, and the investor comes in and they say that they want to invest $2 million, we are splitting it by the ratio of the portfolio. And let me go ahead and
I notice you're using a progress bar. This is also a great feature I think that everyone should implement to their systems when they're transitioning or doing any kind of complex logic in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, with Visualforce pages, it's a great way to indicate to the user that there's some processing going on behind the scenes. Now, this was an example of a new investor who came in, and all their investors got allocated in the ratio of 5:3. So far, we've been able to manage through Apex code and make all the updates. Now, you may have a situation where by now I have, let's say, 50 different investors. And if I decide now that I want to change this ratio, so instead of 5:3, I want to make it 5:5. So this now means that I have to go and update all the records that were created. And this is an example whereby using the standard Apex governor limit we were running into, so we created through this UI, we were able to extend that governor limit and create and update more records. So now if I just tab out, it gives the user a message indicating that it's updating all the records, and now it's going ahead and updating all the records. So now if I go back to the investor, you'll see that now their investment is split in the equal ratios. So this is an example where there was a governor limit, and there are ways you can manage, and the key thing is to be aware when you may run into governor limit issues.
Right, and I think for this example, I mean, you're just showing us something that meets kind of like a financial situation, but this can be applied in any industry, any type of design. I mean, when you're talking about a parent object having multiple children and calculations having to be performed, you're definitely going to run into governor limits if you don't think about that in the right.
Absolutely, and the concept is applicable for any kind of design needs.
Great. Another thing that's very important when it comes to architecting is thinking about security. Now, Salesforce provides a very powerful security and sharing model by default. And if you have any more requirements, or if you want to implement something more granular, you can also leverage features like Apex Managed Sharing. Has this been something that you've had to consider when architecting?
Yes, there are special situations. Now, I would say that in most of the situations, the security model that comes with the Force.com platform suffices, and actually it has a lot of features that you can use and put into your product. You may find situations where, let's say, especially in financial services, or if the security requirements are complex, where you have to enhance the security model. So the example here is if you have an object relationship between 4 objects, which is kind of a circular relationship like this, and you want to say that whoever has the rights to object 1, only that person should be able to see all these other objects. Now, object 4 becomes a problem in this one because, one, you can, through standard Salesforce security tools, you can take it down to these 2 objects, but not to the 4th object. But by enhancing the security model, you can do that. So if I actually go back to the same example on the portfolio side that we were talking about, what we did was in this created a custom sharing model, works the same logic as the regular sharing model, where we can go here and say that I want to add this new user to the security model, and this person has only read access. And now when I go and save, it actually takes that security model, and if I now look at this object, which is actually object 4 in the diagram that I showed you, and if I go and look at the sharing settings, you'll see that this user got added. So that's a way where you can extend the underlying security model, and if you have complex security requirements, you can overcome them through this code.
I think as you continue developing, the next obvious step is you're going to want to start testing your application. And in order for you to release your commercial application, you're going to want to make sure that it's quality and as well that you've implemented the necessary test methods. In order for you to even deploy or distribute your application, you need to reach a certain percentage of test code coverage. And so Force.com allows you to write these test methods so that you can test certain areas and implement unit testing. There's different types of tests that you'd want to create when you're building your application and releasing it. You'll want to think about your unit tests, functional tests, and integration tests if you're doing any type of composite development. One of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is how testing comes into play with managed packages. Again, you cannot distribute or package your managed package until you've created up to 75% test code coverage using these test methods. Also, it's important to use the is_test annotation because this does not, then these test methods will not count against your 1 meg Apex code test limit. And then finally, when you're writing your test methods, you should have your test classes. Test classes include the necessary data. Don't rely on the data in the org because you're not going to be able to see what the data in the org is for all your customers. So have that be within the test methods themselves. For you, Keaton, has this also been an issue, or have you ever had other insight onto this area?
Right. We do use test methods for all our unit testing. What we also have done for our apps is, especially on the functional testing side, we just created our own testing tool. So it's actually an automated testing script that goes through and tests all the functional scenarios automatically. So initially, all the testing used to take 2-3 days of manual testing for us, and now through this tool that we have, we can actually do it in an hour. So it's the fact that you can build a tool just on the Force.com platform and run these scenarios is very helpful and saves us a lot of time.
That's great. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to know how that tool works. Now, the next thing after testing actually comes the distribution process. So you built your commercial application, you've tested it, now you want to distribute it. And the way you can do this is by leveraging our packaging technology. A package is essentially just a kind of a virtual container that houses all the different components of your application. What I'm showing you here are all the different areas that are currently supported with packaging. You can always get a quick list by actually creating a package in your org. But as you can see, as a Summer 09, there's a number of features that are available in the Force.com platform that can be packaged. And some of these, again, when you're dealing with managed packages, you get some added benefits, such as your Apex classes, your triggers, your Visualforce components, your controller extensions. All of these are obfuscated in your managed package to hide your IP. Another thing that's important to note, as of 2010 January, we're going to be deprecating custom S controls, so you won't be able to create new ones. Your existing ones will still be there, and you can modify those, but this is really to move everyone onto Visualforce. If there are things that you want to package that are not there today, I definitely recommend going to the Idea Exchange and letting us know so we can get those on our roadmap. And again, some of these features, even though you can install them via packaging, you'll also want to think about, well, how am I going to implement them? You know, for instance, if you had like a related list on a standard object, that you'll be able to package the fields and the relations, but you'll actually have to include in a customization guide to tell your admin, hey, don't forget to move this related list to the standard layout. So these are things that you'll want to keep in mind as you're architecting and thinking about the release. Now, in addition to just testing your code and and everything in your terms of development, you're also going to want to test your package. And the way you can do this is by leveraging the various states that you can have when you're working with managed packages. When you first create your managed package, you'll be created in this beta state. And this is really what you want to use for testing, because beta managed packages, they're still in a form where they can still be easily changed. You can make destructive changes, and it allows you to run various tests to make sure that they'll work kind of when they're released and production ready. We actually provide all of our partners various testing environments, kind of larger testing environments that mimic the Group Edition, Professional Edition, Enterprise, Developer Edition. So you can leverage these to make sure your application is going to work the way it is. And then once you've done all your testing and you've confirmed everything is okay, then you can upload that managed package into a release state. And then it's at this point that it's ready to be distributed commercially. Some things to consider: you're always going to want to make sure you test beta managed package first before you go release. Again, just because you can make any changes that you need to. Test against every edition that you plan to support. You know, you don't want any surprises, so if you plan to support all editions, test against all editions. Again, for partners, we provide all the different environments that you need, and if there's anything else that you any resources that you require, you can let us know by logging a case through the partner portal. Also, test your packages in an org that has a large data set, because you want to make sure that those governor limits aren't going to be hit. You're going to want to make sure that the installation is going to be seamless. And so a large data set is something that usually will kind of test your application thoroughly to make sure everything works appropriately. Any other pieces that you would want to add to this?
I think all these are valid. The only thing I'll add is that even when you're doing an upgrade, you should go through these steps. So if you already have a product done and released and now you're coming up with a new version, with the new version also you should have a beta managed package of the new version and make sure you go through all these steps before you release your upgrade.
That's a great point. And speaking of upgrades, it's the next point that we want to talk about. With managed packages and with the technology that powers it, this makes it very easy for you as an architect to think about how are you going to release those upgrades and how are you going to release those fixes. Starting from the top, you can see that the flow is very simple and it's cyclical. Basically, you will start by creating that managed package. Again, test the beta's managed package, and like you said, Keithan, if it's an upgrade or a fix, you're going to want to test that new version of that beta. And then once it's all thoroughly tested, go ahead and release it in that release state, and you can distribute it. Your customers then seamlessly install it. They just follow a few steps, and they can get that new version, and you go through the cycle again with every new release and every fix. The most important thing to note here for your customers, as they upgrade, everything is seamless. They don't need to worry about their data or their customization being affected. So even if they extend your application, it's something that they can take advantage of going forward. And then finally, in terms of the path to commercial apps, you're going to want to think about support. And the way we help all of our customers, developers, and partners building commercial applications is by providing them also a license management application tool. We call this the LMA. It's free. You can get it from the App Exchange. And essentially, once you have the LMA and you've associated it with your managed package, you now know who's downloaded your app. You can see how many licenses they're using. You can offer them free trials, so it's very easy, seamless, kind of no intervention required. And then you can go ahead and suspend their licenses, increase their licenses, expire them, so you have that protection. If you want to use the LMA, you want to make sure that you're working with a managed package, and you want to be mindful that LMA tracks all production installs. It doesn't track sandbox installs. So just to kind of wrap up, the path to commercial app, it's constantly evolving, and there are some key takeaways that we want you to be mindful of. As an architect, there are things that you're going to think about, but really we wanted to highlight the top points that we think that are very impactful and things that hopefully, as you consider them early, you'll be able to release a successful application. So you'll want to make sure that you think about, again, what type of application. Is it native or is it composite? What are the additions that you plan to support? Because that's really going to give you an idea of what the foundation of your app is going to be. Spend some time with the workbook so you learn the Force.com features so you're not finding yourself trying to implement something that's already there. Then start focusing on your data model. And then I'd highly recommend, we have a lot of other literature, but I really want to call out the Apex Best Practices and Governor articles. This is written by a colleague of mine, Andrew Albert, and a unit test article written by a colleague of mine, Jesse Lorenz. Both of these articles are very important to just, again, understand the specifics around our programming language and how you would actually test. And then start testing. And test as much as you can, beta before you release, and then test that beta again. Make sure everything is right, and then you're ready to distribute, support, and continually iterate. So I just want to ask you, Keithan, kind of with everything you've seen to Force.com and your experience, how has it made you successful as an ISV?
Right. We actually got, as I mentioned, several products on the Force.com platform, and all the things that we went through are things that we have incorporated in our products. Now, one of the things we do offer for all our customers is free support. And the reason we are able to do that in this kind of a model on the Force.com platform is because it's a single code base. Through the LMA, we can track everything, all our customers. It's kind of a distributed model in cloud computing. So our support team, which is actually in our offices in New Delhi, can support all our customers globally. So all these things kind of help us and not just create, but also manage and support all our products on the Force.com platform.
Excellent. So in terms of next steps, I know you guys are excited, so I want to give you some things that I think are really going to help you move forward. First, review the Architect Core Resource Library. It has the companion article that goes with this presentation. It has some of these other articles that I mentioned earlier at developer.force.com/core-resources. Also, attend the Fastest Path to SaaS technical webinar. You have to be a partner, but you can sign up for free to become a partner at developer.force.com/partners. And again, this is a great resource for you to understand, not only do I build an application, but what are the things that I need to think about to release it, to the public to make it sure that it's commercially viable. Once you become a partner, you have access to our partner portal that has other resources, such as like these larger test environments that I think are very important for your commercial success. And Navatar has also put their link here to their Architect resource that has a lot of resources and tips and I think tricks that you guys have experienced over the time building and working with Force.com. Later this month, the fun continues with another Tech Talk. We're going to be talking about Adobe and developing rich UI using Force.com and Adobe Flex. So essentially, how can you integrate Flex and Visualforce and create a very compelling application? That's August 27th at 10 a.m. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these questions. All right, so a lot of questions here, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is going to be recorded, and it will be available in the next week or so. So definitely come back and check developer.force.com for that. There's a question for you, Keithan. From your perspective, what are the 2 or 3 most critical things that architects should focus on when building a commercial app?
When we look at a commercial app, it's from a total perspective. You're not just building it, but you're also maintaining and supporting it, and in the end, it has to be profitable. So what I would recommend is that when you're building a commercial app, the things to focus on are the design is absolutely critical, and in the design, actually, not just the design of the application you're building, but also factor in things like maintenance and support, because you don't want to build an app for which then the support and maintenance becomes too costly. In the end, always keep in mind that what you're building here is something that should make you money.
Great. There's a question about pricing, and they're asking, what is the pricing for an ISV to build an application and the royalties to Salesforce.com? Well, when you build an application on Force.com, what's great is it's free. You can develop for free. You get a free developer edition. You can release it for free. If it's native, you can put it on the App Exchange for free, and your users, and you can start selling. Really, if your customers already have editions of Salesforce, then they already have the license of Salesforce, and they're just going to pay you whatever the cost is for your app. We don't take any royalty. You take all the profit. If you're going to use something like TrialForce, then and you're going after net new customers, then we kind of embed a license fee into your the product that you sell. So that's really to kind of use the Force.com platform running it. There's a lot of questions about this, but basically what I would recommend is definitely go to developer.force.com and go to our partner page to see information on our pricing. Plus, I mentioned that we do these technical webinars every other week. The other week, between the every other week, is a partner webinar that talks about pricing. And so I highly recommend that you go to that to learn more about pricing and get those questions addressed. Let's see here. All right. So another consideration for managed packages, global Visualforce component attributes and Apex method signatures cannot be removed or changed once the package is in a managed release status. So yes, that's true. Again, once you release your managed package, especially if it's not global, then they won't even be able to see the signatures or the code. But if you do release it in a global state, then they can at least see the signatures, and at that point, the customer can call that class, and they can extend it and add functionality on top of that. Let's see here. Another question for you, Keithan. Why would you have used the standard layout for the summary link? Your Visualforce page looks like a standard page, so why don't you use that so you can offer native customization? Was there any reasoning behind that? Or?
No, actually, you cannot offer a native customization on the Visualforce pages, even though it may look like a standard page layout. So with standard page layouts, you have all the tools available in the setup, so the customers can go and modify. With Visualforce, they cannot do that, and that's why we actually created a configuration utility whereby they could allow that.
Okay, let's see here. There's a question here about when do you plan to release the capabilities to deprecate all or parts of the managed packages? Well, this is actually happening right now. With Summer 09, we actually now allow you to deprecate Apex classes, and so there's an annotation that you can use in your class at deprecated, and what that means is that when your user installs that new version, the user can actually leverage either the old version or the new version and use the new version where it has it deprecated. The value here is if you think about Salesforce, when we release a new version, we release a new version of our API, but we're not going to just instantly deprecate like our version 15 or 14 or 13 because we may have customers that are leveraging that. And so we're giving the same type of functionality to our anyone who builds a commercial application on our platform. They can release that version. When they release version 2, their customers can still leverage 1.0, and then once they've all moved to 2.0, then you can move that deprecation to an actual remove. So we're going to start with Apex Code, which we've done, and we're going to slowly start introducing new features and components that you can deprecate. Great question. Let's see here. So I think there was a question about that progress bar you showed. Was something that you developed using Visualforce?
Right, that is true. So this question is around how does it avoid the governor limit. It's not a question of avoiding governor limits. It's sometimes like with Apex triggers, for example, if you just write a trigger, you can have up to 20 DML statements. Now, if you call the same thing through a UI that you build in Visualforce, then that limit goes up to 100. So there are tools like these that are available whereby you can use different things to overcome the governor limit, or you can build it in the code itself so that each call is optimized and you're able to make the calls without exceeding the governor limit.
Right. And one thing, if you guys are trying to figure out how to implement a progress bar in your application, another colleague of mine, John Mountjoy, he actually wrote a great blog on this topic. I think it was last week, so if you go to our blogs page, you can see kind of how he implemented it and their sample code to leverage. So someone's asking, we want to develop an application for Professional and Group Edition, but we were under the impression that Apex Code and API were not available, but now you're saying that you can develop that. So let me just clarify again. Professional and Group Edition, yes, by default they do both do not support Apex Code and API. But if you release a native managed package, we can authorize your Apex Code, so then your Apex Code will run in both Group and Professional Edition. In terms of the API, if you want to do an application that's actually going to leverage the API like an integration, we will give you a client ID after you pass a security review that allows you to integrate Professional Edition, but it's only Professional Edition, not Group Edition. So Apex Code can run in both if you get authorized. API can run in Professional Edition if you go through the security review. Are there any recommended books for Apex or Salesforce development? Developer.force.com has a ton of great resources. There's also, under the documentation link, there's a link to our Force.com library that has a lot of books that you can download that talk about things like our fundamentals, our developer guide. Again, also with our new Architects Core Resource Library, there's a lot of things that are very relevant to this. So that seems to be all the questions that we have right now. There's more that are coming in, but we're going to go ahead and address those questions offline, and then we'll have a page up with these questions as well as a link to the recording. Again, I want to thank you, Keithan, for your insight. I think it's always valuable to get someone who's actually built on the Force.com and get an architect's overview. And I want to thank everyone for their time and attention today. Appreciate this, and we look forward to some commercial apps that you build on Force.com. Thank you.
This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.